So now I'd like to touch into malaria. Okay, worldwide, we already know that infectious diseases are leading causes of death in children, in adults, and malaria is also one of the leading causes. Let's see some characteristics first about malaria. Malaria is caused by parasites from the genus Plasmodium. So there are different types of parasites. Falciparum and vivax are the ones that pose the greatest threat. Okay? And that disease is spread by the bite of a female mosquito. Some of the symptoms, if you're not very familiar with malaria, people will experience fever, we have some chills, and symptoms like a flu. Okay? If malaria is left untreated, if we don't treat the patient, malaria can progress and have severe complications, and ultimately it can result in death. So it is a life-threatening disease. This is some highlights of the World Malaria Report published recently in 2015 by the WHO, the World Health Organization. And I like to mention a few key findings from this report. About the incidence, globally, the number of malaria cases has declined. This is positive, has declined 18%. Okay, it has declined from 262 million in the year 2000 to 214 millions in the year 2015. But for 2015, we know that the estimated cases are occurring also disproportionately throughout all regions. 88% of the cases are there in the African region. Okay, 10% in Southeast Asia region, and only 2% in Eastern Mediterranean region. The incidence rate of malaria is estimated to have decreased. So it has decreased, the incidence rate, from 2000 to 2015 by 37%. And this is good news. So the target of the Millennium Developmental Goals, the Mdgs, which was to halt and begun to reverse the incidence of malaria, has been achieved. Okay. Is everyone familiar with the Mdgs? Have you ever heard about Mdgs? Thank you. No? Oh, okay, okay. Positive. Anybody else? Don't be shy. Just it's not an exam. Just to see if we're all okay. Yes. So for those of you, maybe anybody wants to make a comment? No? No. Especially with the video, right? Yes. So in the year 2000, actually, after the Millennium Summit, a meeting of the member states, all member states, the United Nations, they agree to 8 goals, okay? And one of them, the 6th one, was related to HIV, malaria, and other diseases. So this is a goal all these member countries and other international organizations put their mind into. Okay, we will have to reduce the number of HIV infections and malaria and other diseases. So I will briefly mention when I show you some of the findings. Okay. Let's continue with mortality. Also, it is good news globally between the year 2000 and 2015, and we're always comparing 2000 to 2015 because the MDGs started in 2000, and it was a goal that they have that will finish in 2015. Okay, we will do this, we will work towards this goal, and we will measure it in the year 2015. So how good are we doing or how bad are we doing? Okay, so that's why we're always mentioning from the year 2000 to 2015. So there was a decline, 48% in the number of malaria deaths. We went from more than 800,000 to 438,000 in these 15 years. But again, the deaths are mostly occurring in the African region. 90% of them are in the African region, 7% in the Southeast Asia region, and 2% in Eastern Mediterranean region. Okay. Mortality, malaria mortality rate is decreasing also by 60% globally. This is a graph, I hope you can see this. This is for you to see in general the decline of 37% and here 60%. This is years from the year 2000 to 2015 versus malaria cases per 1,000 persons at risk and malaria deaths per 100,000 persons at risk. Okay. So we see here there were large reductions in the number of cases and in the number of deaths between these 15 years. Now if we see in more details by region, we see here this is the percentage in decrease in the estimated malaria case incidence. This is incidence and this is death rate. Okay, how much people die, how much people got infected by different regions from 2000 to 2015. If you see here, this one reached 100% reduction of their cases, and this is the European regions. But if we make an effort and we try to see this light color, this is the African region. Okay, so we mentioned yes, they have a decrease also in the incidence, but still it's not as much as for other regions in the country, in the world. The same is true also for death rates. So some regions have achieved very impressive reductions in the burden, but still there is a lot of work for other regions, especially for the African regions. So this is the number of countries with fewer than 1,110 cases reported for malaria. If we see here, the first dark line would be the number of countries reporting less than 10 cases. Okay, this one in the middle will be those reporting less than 100 cases, and the lighter one are reporting less than 1,000 cases. So in general, we see that with time, in these 15 years, the number of countries reporting less and less cases are actually increasing. So more countries now, this number of countries, more countries are reporting less cases. If you remember from the previous slide, this one, this is the European region. So now we will see what happened here. This is the elimination of malaria in the European region. This is a graphic, this is a picture of malaria cases, indigenous malaria cases in WHO, the European region, from 1990 to 2015. And actually, in 1975, the European region, except from Turkey, was considered malaria-free. They were free of malaria. But this achievement is, as it was and is now true, is fragile. Why did we see, this is Turkey, the light color. This is, each of the colors will represent different countries, okay? So why did we have this increase, especially in Turkey? Actually, this was following the first Gulf War and influx of refugees coming from Iraq. And then we have an increase also in other different countries, which was explained also as a consequence. This is coincidentally with a war in Afghanistan and the dissolution of the Soviet Union that was followed by re-establishment of local transmissions. So you see now how maintaining 0 indigenous cases will require a continued political commitment, constant vigilance against the re-establishment of transmissions, and of course further investment to strengthen the health systems to ensure that any resurgence can be rapidly contained. So when we think about African region bearing most of the cases and most of the burden, we see the global burden of mortality is dominated now in countries in sub-Saharan Africa, and from them, DRC, Democratic Republic of Congo, and Nigeria, altogether, those 2 countries account for 35% of the global total. 35% only in these 2 countries of the estimated malaria deaths.